it's this sort of overwhelming sensation of, how does this even happen? And then these areas where, in December, we couldn't access, like Rafah, the southern part of Gaza, for example. I've been talking to a lot of friends who have been going back there, and they're saying, it's even worse than other parts, because they're saying it's not even that a building has been reduced to rubble, it's actually been reduced to sand. And I know there's been a lot of focus right now on, the humanitarian aid going in and the 600 plus trucks, but there's something very important that is, quite tragically not really being talked about, and that is this very urgent need for medical evacuations. I'll give you one example. There's a little girl who's 2.5 years old. She has something that's called protein C deficiency, but that's at least what doctors in Gaza think she has. They don't have the tests to run it properly. What this has done is basically caused her blood to overclot, and right now her arms and legs are covered with gangrenous tissue. She's at very real risk of losing her limbs and potentially losing her life. She needs an emergency medical evacuation, as do thousands of other children who are on this waiting list. But we still have not seen those starting up. And quite frankly, all of us thought in the humanitarian sector that the ceasefire would bring about speedier medical evacuations. The opposite seems to have taken place.
I want to stay on the topic of children. The UN estimates at least 14,000 children have been killed in Gaza. I want to mention that is according to estimates from the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Half of those are displaced. Like you mentioned, many need medical treatment. From your understanding, can you explain exactly what children are facing in that region? You did tell me the story of the 2-year-old. Is that, I don't want to say common, but are you hearing those stories more often?
Her story very much kind of eclipses one aspect of what the complete and total decimation of the medical sector, coupled with, the sheer number of blockades we have to go to get an adequate medical supplies has done. So all of the testing equipment that would have been needed to run this little girl Habiba's tests do not exist. The medications, the treatment that she needs doesn't exist. And actually, the sort of specialty care that she needs doesn't exist in Gaza. And so what you have is, if we're talking specifically about children who get these, horrific blast injuries, very complex injuries, but there isn't the needed testing. If we're just talking about Gaza City, for example, there's one CT scanner in the entire city. There's no MRI machine. So if you're a child and you need an MRI so that doctors can determine the best course of treatment for you, and you're in Gaza City, you don't have access to one. Plus, the other issue is that the rate of infection among injuries has been extremely high because children's bodies are so weakened due to malnutrition that their body cannot fight to heal and fight off infection at the same time. And so you see children who are repeatedly being either readmitted into hospital, or children that doctors can't end up discharging because their wounds are not healing properly. Add to all of that the mental health aspect of all of this. For, a little child to have every single pillar of stability in their life destroyed, home, their parents' ability to provide them with comfort, education, any sense of routine, and then to be living with the constant fear of the drone and the bombs, at the very least that has sort of subsided right now. But these traumas are very deep and very, very ingrained, and are something that really needs to be focused on in the future moving forward as well. We talk a lot about Gaza's physical rebuilding, but we also need to equally talk about Gaza's psychological rebuilding.
I'm so glad you mentioned the mental trauma. Very quickly here, you mentioned the medical urgent needs. What else do the children of Gaza need?
At this stage, they still need a lot of everything. They need proper shelter. They need proper access to clean water, to bathrooms. We have to recognize that the vast majority of Gaza's children have not slept in a bed for 15 months. And actually, when, people would talk to them right before the ceasefire came into play, and a number of children were being asked, what's the thing you look forward to the most? And they were saying things like, I want to sleep in a bed. I want to sleep in a room on my own. I want to be able to go to the bathroom and have a measure of privacy. I want to go back to school. That's a huge thing for Gazans, going back to school, because education is so highly valued there. And so they need their entire sort of, as I was saying earlier, pillars of stability to be rebuilt. A child needs stability and safety. And that's not just, physical stability, a physical home, but it's access to all of these various different aspects, of life that allow one to live a dignified life. You look at the kids in Gaza right now, the vast majority of them are running around without proper shoes, without proper clothing. Their days are spent waiting in line to try to get clean water, lugging around these water jugs that are bigger and heavier than they themselves are, or waiting in line trying to get, bread for the family. I mean, the child is sort of entrenched in this daily struggle of survival. That's what it is to be a child in Gaza right now.
It is such a dire situation. I know.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.